Welcome to another biblically based look into today's news from Christian Voice New Zealand. Now here's Mike Bain.
Hi there. Vaccination passports are so yesterday, right? So why is it that the New Zealand government is introducing a new vaccination passport? The COVID response minister, Chris Hipkins, says, well, they're for people who want to keep their records up to date. He claims there are still some businesses wanting to cite a vaccine passport before you can enter the premises. Well, to be honest, this is the biggest load of codswallop I've heard. As reported in the May 18th edition of the New Zealand Herald, Minister Hipkins at a recent Select Committee hearing said he hoped that most pandemic response rules under the COVID-19 Public Health Response Act will largely be dismantled or replaced by the end of the year. What worries me, though, is, and it should worry you, is Hipkins said that the Act will largely be dismantled or replaced by the end of the year. So, really, what is it that he's saying when the same week he introduces the new vaccination passport? And, of course, we had the traffic light setting still being kept at orange because of a second wave of Omicron as expected. You know, it was only a few months ago, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern was signalling New Zealand would probably stay in this COVID framework because of the expected outbreak of winter flu. So, will these sorts of restrictions on our lives, which we're now so familiar with, ever cease? Hipkins claimed that he was uncomfortable with the restrictions, and I quote again from the New Zealand Herald report, "It's an uncomfortable necessity. These kinds of extraordinary powers should only be used in an emergency situation and only as long as they're justified." So what does he really mean, as long as they're justified? The dictionary has some interesting definitions of the word justify, from absolving oneself from an action to being reasonable and acceptable, or having good and valid reasons for an action. As an average man in the street, this statement is kind of vague when it comes to the government's justification for actions taken for the common good. Why are we still talking about vaccination certification? Good question. When we signed up for the certificate, we allowed the government to set up a litmus test for individuals to be able to engage in commerce, movement and any other right which corresponds to life in a supposedly free society. You only have to think back for when you wanted to simply buy a cup of coffee. You first had to show your certificate, and guess what? According to Hipkins, this new certificate, which will have your boosters updated on it, can still be requested by retailers and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. So where down the road does it end? The use of vaccine passports, vaccine admission requirements and travel restrictions may seem like small but necessary steps in winning the war against the COVID-19 virus, but really, it's just so much propaganda. They were only necessary to the police state in its efforts to further brainwash the populace into believing that the government legitimately has the power to enforce such blatant acts of authoritarianism. You can't live in a democratic society if you allow the government to act like a police state. You can't claim to value freedom if you allow the government to work like a dictatorship. And you can't expect to have your rights respected if you allow the government to treat whomever it pleases with disrespect and an utter disregard for the rule of law. Now, if you're tempted to justify these draconian measures for whatever reason, for the sake of health concerns, the economy, or national security, just beware. There's always a boomerang effect. Whatever dangerous practices you allow the government to conduct now, rest assured these same practices can and will be used against you when the government decides to set its sights on you. Hipkins claims emergency powers will remain in place if they're justified. History, before it gets rewritten, proves any government can justify law changes against the will of its people. Hey, it's only a vaccination pass today, but tomorrow, will it become more? We, the people, yes, you and I, have shown the governments the world over, time and time again, how we're willing to bow down to those who rule. In the Bible book of Daniel, you can read about how the population were commanded to bow to King Nebuchadnezzar, and they did, but there were a few odd exceptions. 20th century history, before it gets rewritten by some, recorded people have bowed to the wishes of their kings and rulers, like Nazi Germany, how it justified a national ID system for the Jews. It was called the Yellow Star. And do you know what? The people bowed. In South Africa, the people bowed to the governing authority to practice apartheid. Passbooks were used to regulate the movement of black citizens and segregate the population. And also in the Central African nation of Rwanda, it bowed to their leaders' commands to carry identity cards, which played a crucial role in the genocide of the Tutsis. Identity cards have helped oppressive regimes conduct eliminationist thought policies such as mass expulsion, forced relocation and group denationalisation. We were told to bow to COVID restrictions as they were for the greater good of the country, but now we're facing hard economic times and more threats. Daily, they're keeping us, needing us to live in fear, to wear face masks, retain a vaccination certificate, making us daily rely more and more on the government. You know, at some point, it's not going to matter whether your skin is black or yellow or brown or white. It won't matter whether you're an immigrant or a citizen. It's not even going to matter whether you're rich or poor. It won't even matter whether you've been properly medicated, vaccinated or indoctrinated. Hey, it's only a vaccination card, I hear you say, and it's voluntary. But you're being lulled into a false sense of security. Hipkins said it himself. They'll either scrap emergency powers or replace them. They're an uncomfortable necessity. But given the history of this government, do you think, regardless of how uncomfortable Chris Hipkins feels about the restrictions, they're going to be scrapped? This government is justifying the reason for you to carry an identification card which contains your COVID record. Soon it'll be easier to have all your records on a magnetic strip. Conspiracy theorist, I hear you say? No, I'm just being realistic. You see, you can justify anything, but really it's not the fault of the New Zealand government. You know, they must act this way to fulfil Bible prophecy. The cast has been set during the pandemic. Many will have heard of the mark of the beast. Many will take it, as the Bible says in Revelation 13, in order to buy and sell. But I give you the warning that that time is almost upon us. He is coming. His arrival has been foretold. And like in the days of the prophet Daniel, you'll be forced to bow to the ruler of this world. And it won't be Nebuchadnezzar. It's going to be the Antichrist.
Feel free to leave your comments, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For more information about our work and how you can support it is available on our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com.